Johnson's latter by signing up, you acknowledge and agree to our privacy policy and terms of use. You may unsubscribe at any time by following the directions at the bottom of the newsletter or by contacting us here. This site is protected by reCAPTCHA and the Google Privacy Policy and Terms of Service. Apply. House Speaker Mike Johnson held his first news conference since securing the gavel this morning, making a surprise appearance alongside the rest of the GOP leadership team. He proceeded to leave Capitol Hill scratching their heads on his new idea for handling the looming government funding deadline. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than with the November 17 cutoff date just over 2 weeks away. Johnson said there was a growing recognition that a continuing resolution might be necessary to avoid a shutdown. Okay, fine, all good. Then he told reporters he's considering a laddered CR as a way to keep the government's lights on, say. What now? The details of the strategy remain eminently unclear, but Johnson said such a bill would extend individual pieces of the appropriations process, individual bills, suggesting that it would set staggered deadlines to pass each of the 12 yearly appropriations bills into law. In theory, this would give Congress an incentive to stick with the smaller bills rather than assembling them all into a big omnibus, which has become standard practice over the past 2 decades. In practice, the proposed system would create a rolling series of partial shutdown threats affecting different federal agencies at different times. And, given Congress's recent history with passing individual spending bills, it's probably a recipe for a slow-motion debacle. In reality, the most likely result would be a quick government-wide shutdown if Johnson actually moves forward. Democrats and the White House would never go for it. And a number of Republicans, particularly appropriators, charged with overseeing those funding bills, would likely think it's a bad idea. Catherine Tully McManus and Caitlin Emma Wright. Tuberville Tut-Tut's staffer, Senator Tommy Tuberville's communications director warned anti-abortion groups to make clear that GOP senators risk primary challenges if they back the new campaign to overturn his efforts to block military promotions over the Pentagon's abortion policy. Burgess Everett scoops. Stephen Stafford wrote in the email, obtained by Burgess, that it is imperative for all of the groups to make clear, in some words, that any Republican who votes for this will be primaried. Hey, only need 9 squishes. And they will get there if we don't act, Stafford wrote, couching the words as, my opinion, and my view. The context: it's a rare move for senators to float primaries against their own party members, and rarer still for staffers to do so. Senate ethics rules prohibit the use of official resources, including staff time and the trappings of the chamber, to do political or campaign work. However, the Senate Ethics Committee seldom takes tangible action. Even more context. Even more powerful Hill staffers have lost their jobs for engaging in similar freelancing. Expect Tuberville's colleagues to take note of how he handles the situation. Time equals 400 ms. Greater than. He did a no, Tuberville told Burgess in a brief interview. It wasn't my statement. I totally disagree with that. We're teammates here. Meanwhile, on the left, in the minority, Representative Becca Balint, DVT, and 6 other freshman progressives have formed a clique of sorts on Capitol Hill, leaning on one another for support as they struggle to find their place in a Congress overrun by Republicans. NYT's Robert Jimison reports this morning. The 7, like many liberals on Capitol Hill, have struggled to gain traction on what they came to Washington to accomplish. Of the 45 pieces of legislation members of the group have collectively introduced since the start of the 118th Congress, none has been signed into law. And only one, a measure from Representative Morgan McGarvey, DKY, to strengthen oversight of education benefits for veterans, has passed the House. The Comparison Game, WAPO's Jesus Rodriguez has a deep dive into Representative Barbara Lee's views on the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict and its comparisons to 9/11. Lee, who was the only member to vote against a 2001 resolution allowing the use of open-ended military force against terrorist groups, urges caution when comparing the two events. I'm not resisting it, Lee said when asked about the comparison. But we're not going to war. So that's a big difference. Top-Ed, Hunter. Biden makes a forceful statement on the weaponization of his addiction struggles in politics in a new USA Today op-ed this morning. What troubles me is the demonization of addiction, of human frailty, using me as its avatar and the devastating consequences it has for the millions struggling with addiction, desperate for a way out and being bombarded by the denigrating and near-constant coverage of me and my addiction on Fox News. 2024 Watch off the fence, Senator Rick Scott picks Trump over DeSantis in Florida showdown. He messengers Mark Caputo scoops. While it's unusual for Representative Tim Scott, R. Florida, to get involved in an in-state primary, his decision to endorse Trump's presidential bid over Florida Governor Ron DeSantis comes as little surprise. Scott has had a strained relationship with DeSantis ever since he ran to replace Scott as governor in 2018. And Scott has a long-standing friendship with Trump that the two struck prior to either running for political office. Haley's holdouts, while many Republican donors are willing to unite behind former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley as a clear Trump alternative in 2024, they are holding back because they see the former president as the inevitable nominee. Apps Thomas Beaumont and Steve Peoples report. In many ways, Haley presents exactly what key Republican donors say they are seeking. But just over 10 weeks before Iowa's caucuses launched a GOP nomination calendar, none of the would-be Trump alternatives has broken out. Mirror, NYT's Reed Epstein is up with a look at how Democratic Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is battling for support for his re-election bid by mirroring Biden's image as a strong leader through the pandemic. But with the White House deeply unpopular in the state, Beshear is doing everything he can to separate himself from the president. Ad Wars, Ramaswamy drops an 8-figure ad buy to close out the primary, by Adam Wren and Lisa Kaczynski. Vivek Ramaswamy is planning to spend a massive sum of money on an ad campaign designed to reverse his decline in the polls. He will drop an 8-figure buy across broadcast, cable, radio, digital and direct mail in 2 key early voting states. All told, the expenditure will be to the tune of as much as $8 million in Iowa and $4 million in New Hampshire, beginning Saturday. Jumping ahead, as if the 2024 presidential election wasn't enough to absorb right now, Rep. R.O. Khanna's repeated trips to the early primary state of New Hampshire has fueled speculation whether he will run for president in 2028. Fox News' Paul Steinhauser reports. Trump CARDSBALLOT battles a trial to remove former President Donald Trump from the 2024 presidential ballot in Minnesota began today in the state Supreme Court. The arguments are similar to the ongoing case before the Colorado's High Court. Both suits contend that Trump should be disqualified from running because his actions leading up to the January 6 insurrection violates the 14th Amendment. Section 3 of the amendment specifies that anyone who's engaged in insurrection or rebellion, after previously being sworn an oath to the Constitution, can't run for office. But Trump's lawyers are questioning the exact definitions, noting that, while the events of January 6 devolved into a riot, they were not an insurrection in the constitutional sense. Apps Steve Harnowski and Nicholas Riccardi report. Time equals 400 ms, greater than of the many similar cases filed across the country. Colorado and Minnesota cases are furthest along, putting one or both on an expected path to the U.S. Supreme Court, which has never decided the issue. Meanwhile, in New York, today is the second day of testimony from Trump's 2 sons in the $250 million civil fraud trial in New York against the former president and his family's business dealings. Live updates from NBC News and in Florida. Trump's classified documents case schedule may be delayed, Judge Cannon says, by WAPO's Perry Stein and Devlin Barrett. America and the World. Time equals 400 ms, greater than stocking up. South Korean military officials announced today that North Korea is likely to have sent a wide range of missiles and ammunition to Russia as it continues its invasion of Ukraine. Apps Hung Jin Kim and Kim Tong-hung report. North Korea has been pushing to expand cooperation with Russia and China in the face of protracted security tensions with the United States. Both Russia and North Korea dismissed the weapons shipment accusations as baseless. Beyond the BELTWAYEYEBROW raise, FBI raids home of Eric Adams's fundraising chief, Knights William Rashbaum, Dana Rubenstein and Jeffrey Mays scoop. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation on Thursday searched the Brooklyn home of Mayor Eric Adams's chief fundraiser, Brianna Suggs. The raid apparently prompted Mr. Adams to abruptly cancel several meetings scheduled for Thursday morning in Washington, D.C., to talk to White House officials and members of Congress, in the Buckeye State. With early voting already underway in Ohio, complicated ballot language over the state's controversial abortion amendment and misinformation from the GOP have left some abortion rights concerned. NYT's Kate Zernike and Lisa Lira report. The issue. The amendment explicitly allows the state to ban abortion after viability, or around 23 weeks. Unless the pregnant woman's doctor finds the procedure is necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health. But that language does not appear on the ballot. Instead, voters see a summary from the Secretary of State, Frank LaRossi, saying the amendment would always allow an unborn child to be aborted at any stage of pregnancy, regardless of viability. Time equals 400 Ms. Greater than transitions. Kelly Ferguson is joining Proven Media Solutions as Director of Public Affairs. She previously was Healthcare Practice VP at Venn Strategies. Matt Hardwick is joining CGCN Group as a Senior Strategic Comms Advisor. He previously had his own consulting business and worked for Emergent Biosolutions.